Measurement and Scaling Concepts, Chapter 13, Business Research Methods. After this chapter, we're gonna be able to determine what needs to be measured to address a research question or hypothesis, to distinguish levels of scale measurement, to know how to form an index or composite measure, list the 3 criteria for good measurement, and perform a basic assessment of scale reliability and validity. Now, in the introductory example, a company wants to perform a customer relationship management employee evaluation that will allow an overall ranking for all the employees. So the ranking will be used to single out the best performance. Now, some are saying, well, what is performance? How can we rank them? Some are saying that, well, traditionally it's about sales. It's the sales function. Sales will provide an objective performance measure. Some are saying that, well, it's about the margins. I don't care about the sales volumes. I just want to improve my division's profit. But on the other hand, some are saying we need to make sure that our people are treated fairly, and we need to make sure that our customers are happy. So that means we don't need to tie performance to sales or profit or convenience. It should be based on how well that salesperson builds and maintains relationship with the customer. So this example shows how difficult it can be to define, let alone to measure, important business phenomenon. And while some items are quite easily, others present huge challenges to the business researchers. So what do we measure? It's like not every cook or every chef needs to follow a receipt in order to create a great dish, but most amateur chefs, they find one very useful. A receipt can show your ingredients that can produce a tasty dish, but many readers of different receipts and with different cooking abilities, reading the same receipt may have difficult time following exactly the same one, or maybe it's in a different language, or different amounts, that how much is 400 grams, or 1 ounce, or what is a pinch, for example. So we need measurements. But what do we measure? The decision statement and the corresponding research questions and research hypotheses can be used to decide what concepts need to be measured in a given project. And measurement is the process of describing some properties of a phenomenon of interest, usually by assigning numbers in a reliable and valid way. Numbers convey information about the property being measured. When numbers are used, the researcher must have a rule for assigning a number to an observation in a way that provides an accurate description. So this is the measurement and why we measure. This is the idea. Now, concepts. A researcher has to know what to measure before knowing how to measure something. The problem definition process should suggest the concept that must be measured. So a concept can be thought of as a generalized idea that represents something of meaning. Concepts as age, sex, education, number of children are relatively concrete properties. They present few problems in either definition or a measurement. Other concepts are more abstract. Such concepts like loyalty, personality, channel power, trust, culture, corporate culture, or customer satisfaction are difficult and to define as well to measure. So that's why we need to understand and we need to what's measurement and then the concept of measurement. Are there any validity issues with this measurement? Here you can see there are the grades, the student, the percent of grade, and then the letter. 79 is a C, 70 is still a C, 69 is a D, and so on. We need to understand, and we need to have some operational definitions in order to be on the same page. Researchers measure concepts through a process known as operationalization, and this process involves identifying scales that correspond to variance in the concept. Scales, just a scale you may use to check your weight, yeah, but providing a range of values that correspond to different values in the concept that's being measured. So in other words, scales provide correspondence rules that indicate that a certain value on a scale corresponds to some true value of a concept. Yeah, so these are operationalization, scales, correspondence rules, and then we have the construct. Variables. Researchers use variance in concepts to make diagnoses. So we need to define variables, and we suggest that variables capture different concept values. Scales capture variance in concepts, and scales provide the researcher's variable. So once a research project is underway, there is little difference between a concept and a variable. Yeah, this is what variables are. And then construct, like I said, yeah, the term used for concepts that are measured with multiple variables. Now, business researchers use many scales or number systems, and not all scales capture the same richness in a measure. Not all concepts require a rich measure as well. And traditionally, the level of scale measurement is seen as important because it determines the mathematical comparison that are allowable. So we're going to discuss 4 levels of types of scale measurements: nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio levels. Each types offer the researchers progressively more power in how they analyze and test the validity of a specific scale. The first one, nominal scales, represent the most elementary level of measurement, and the nominal scales assign a value to an object for identification or classification purposes only. The value can be but does not have to be a number because no quantities are being represented. So a nominal scale is truly a qualitative scale. Nominal scales are extremely useful and sometimes the only appropriate measure, even though they can be considered elementary. And business researchers, they use these nominal scales really often. But there are some, they are arbitrary. Nominal scales are arbitrary. Each label can be assigned to different categories without some errors, without introducing errors, for example. Ordinal scale. Ordinal scales allow things to be arranged in order based on how much of some concept they possess. An ordinal scale is a ranking scale. In fact, we often use the rank order to describe an ordinal scale. Yeah, research participants often are asked to rank things based on preferences. So the preference is the concept, and then the ordinal scale lists the options from the most least preferred or vice versa. So this is the ordinal one. And here we have a really nice example here, the nominal, yeah, with horses that we see here, then the ordinal, show, place, and win, and then the interval, we have 20 seconds, and ratio, yeah, we see how many minutes for the length, yeah, distance. So interval scales have both nominal and ordinal properties, but they as well capture information about differences in quantities of a concept. So I don't know, the classic example is scale in temperature. Yeah, we have Celsius and Fahrenheit as well, yeah, but different scales, yeah, different scales, what they mean. So the last one, ratio. Ratio scale represent the highest form of measurement in that they have all properties of interval scales with the additional attributes of representing absolute quantities. Interval scales possess only relative meaning, whereas ratio scale represent absolute meanings. So ratio scales provide iconic measurement. 0, has the meaning in that it represents the absence of some concept. An absolute 0 define the characteristics differentiating between a ratio and interval scales. So these are the four. So these are the four: nominal, ordinal, interval, and then we have ratio for scales of measurement. Now, mathematical and statistical analysis of scales. It's true that mathematical operation can be performed with numbers from nominal scales. The results may not have a great deal of meaning. So we put numbers into formulas and perform calculation with almost any numbers, but the researcher has to know the meaning behind the numbers before meaningful conclusion can be drawn. And we have two types. We have discrete measures. Discrete measures are those that take on only one of a finite number of value. So a discrete scale is often used to represent a classification variable. So discrete scales do not represent intensity of measure, only membership. And discrete scales include any yes or no responses, matching colors, color choices, or practically any scale that involves selecting from a small number of categories. Disagree, neutral, agree, these are discrete measures. Continuous measures are those assigning values anywhere along some scale range in a place that corresponds to the intensity of some concept. Ratio measures are continuous measures. So strictly speaking, interval scales are not necessarily continuous. However, a scale response takes on more value, and the error can be introduced by understanding the difference between discrete points, and they are becoming smaller and smaller. So researchers should keep in mind the distinction between ratio and interval measures as well, and errors in judgment can be made when interval measures are treated as ratios. Index measures. Attributes. What are attributes? Attributes. A consumer's attitude towards some product is usually a function of multiple attributes. An attribute is a single characteristic or fundamental feature of an object, a person, or a situation, or even an issue. And then we have a multi-item instrument for measuring a construct are called index measure or composite measure. An index measure assigns a value based on how much of the concept being measured is associated with an observation. And these indexes are formed by adding several variables together. And composite measures as well assign a value based on mathematical derivation of multiple variables. These are attributes, index measures, and composite measures. Now, computing the scales value. A composite measure can be created from common rating scales. And the scales is developed to assess something, how much a consumer trusts a website, for example. And these are summated scale. A summated scale is created by simply summing the response to each item making up the composite measure. And reverse coding. Sometimes a response may need to be reverse coded before computing a summated or average scale value. So reverse coding means that the value assigned for a response is treated oppositely from the other items. So this is summated scales and reverse coding. This example here, it's a statistical software that makes scale recording easy, and this screenshot here is from an SPSS statistical package for social science. Probably you know that software, most widely used statistical software in business related research. And what they need to be done to reverse code the scale, you just need to go right click through the different sequences that are described here, from click to transform, recode, select different variables, the old and the new values, and then in the end the continue. So this is how you can do recoding with SPSS. Now, some criteria for good measurement. 3 criteria: reliability, validity, and sensibility. These are the most important 3 criteria for good measurement. Reliability is an indicator of a measure's internal consistency, and consistency is the key to understand reliability. A measure is reliable when different attempts at measuring something converge on the same result. So consistent scores in some test, for example. Internal consistency. Internal consistency represents a measure's homogeneity. The trustworthiness may require asking several similar but not identical questions. We can discuss here as well about the split half method of checking reliability. It's performed by taking half of the items from a scale, I don't know, the odd numbers, and checking them against the results from the other half, the even numbers. And these two scales half should produce similar scores and correlate highly. Alpha coefficient is the most commonly applied estimate of multiple item scales reliability, and alpha represents an internal consistency by computing the average of all possible split half reliability for a multiple item scale. And this coefficient demonstrates whether or not the different items go in the same direction, converge. Alpha does not address validity, but researchers use alpha as the sole indicator of scale quality. And the coefficient for alpha is from 0, meaning no consistency, to 1, meaning complete consistency. The next one is test reliability. The test-retest method of determining reliability involves administering the same scale or measure to the same respondents at 2 separate times to test for stability. And if the measure is stable over time, the test administered under the same condition each time, we should obtain similar results. So test-retest represents a measure's repeatability. This is a test-retest method. But there are some problems here that are common on the pre-measure. This is the first one, or first measure may sensitize the respondents to their participation in a research project and influence the results of a second measure. So if the time between measures is too long, there may be an attitude change or other maturation of the subject. So a reliable measure can indicate a low or moderate correlation between the first and the second administration. But this low correlation may be due to an attitude change over time rather to the lack of reliability in the measure itself. Validity. Good measure should be both consistent and accurate. Reliability represents how consistent a measure is and that the different attempts at measuring the same thing converge into the same point. Accuracy deals more with how a measure assessed the intended concept. Validity is the accuracy of a measure or the extent to which a score truthfully represents that concept. So, in other words, are we accurately measuring what we think we are measuring? So achieving validity, it's not easy, it's not simple, and this is the example at the beginning, how they're gonna measure the best performance at the example from the beginning. So effort may well lead to performance, but effort does not equal performance all the time. And establishing validity, researchers have attempted to assess validity in many ways. They attempt to provide some evidence of a measured degree of validity by answering a variety of questions. Is there consensus among other researchers that my attitude scale measure what it is supposed to measure, or does my measure cover everything that it should? So this is face validity. Face validity refers to the subjective agreement among professionals that the scale logically reflects the concept being measured. So when does the test item look like they make sense given a concept's definition? This is one. Content validity is the next one. Refers to the degree that the measure covers the domain of interest. Do the items capture the entire scope but not go beyond the concept we are measuring? It's the degree that they are trying to. Criterion validity address the questions: how well does my measure work in practice? Because of this, criterion validity is sometimes referred to a pragmatic validity. Is my measure practical? Criterion validity may be classified as either concurrent validity or predictive validity, depending on the time sequence in which the new measurement scales and the criterion measures are correlated. And the last one, construct validity, exists when a measure reliably truthfully represents a unique concept. This is construct validity, and we've discussed the face validity, content, and criterion validity, but we can assess as well convergent validity and discriminant validity. Convergent validity requires that the concepts that should be related are indeed related. And discriminant one is represents how unique or how distinct a measure, a scale, should not correlate too highly with a measure of different construct. So reliability and validity, this is on a target. You have an old rifle, low reliability. New rifle, it's high reliability. But this is unclear. It's reliable but not valid. It's a little bit not in the middle. It's top right corner. You need to adjust it a little bit. So sensitivity, reliability versus validity is reliability is necessary but not sufficient condition for validity, and the reliable scale may not be valid. But the difference between reliability and validity, we saw it in this previous picture here. And sensitivity, the sensitivity of a scale is important measure concept, particularly when changes in attitude or other hypothetical constructs are under investigation. And sensitivity refers to an instrument ability to accurately measure variability in a concept. So a more sensitive measure with different categories on the scales may be needed as well. So the sensitivity of a scale based on a single question or a single item can be increased by adding questions on items, or because composite measures allow for a greater range of possible score, they are more sensitive than single item scales. So that's why sensitivity generally increased by adding more response points or adding different scale items. So thank you so much for today's lecture, and see you next time. Thank you.